The Dodgers have lost 6 straight games. What is happening with the Los Angeles Dodgers? 6 games, 6 losses, back to back. They've been swept. First by the Boston Red Sox, who took 3 from them at home. Then, instead of bouncing back in Chicago, they went to the Windy City, and the Dodgers went out and got swept again. And for a team that's supposed to be one of the most talented, most terrifying teams in baseball, it's starting to get a little bit concerning. Losing a series happens, even getting swept happens, but back-to-back series does not happen to Los Angeles. And some are starting to ask questions. So today, let's talk about what's wrong with the Dodgers, and whether it's just a brutal stretch of baseball or whether we're starting to see some legitimate issues coming down the stretch and into October with this team. All right, let's put 6 straight losses into perspective. The Dodgers entered this stretch as a team nobody really wanted to play. It's a roster absolutely loaded with talent, and yet over the last 6 games, none of it has mattered. Shohei Ohtani seems to be the only one out there to play. Boston beats them in 3 straight games. Now, Boston has been one of the hottest teams in baseball. They come into that game almost not expected to give them a good fight, but coming into Los Angeles and sweeping them is no joke. Then they head to the Cubs series in a perfect opportunity to reset, and they lose all 3 games in Chicago as well. Now, if they came out and won even game 1 or game 2, even if they took that 3rd game after a 5-game stretch, I wouldn't even be sitting here talking about it. But it's the headline of 2 straight sweeps and 6 straight games that clearly something is happening over and over and over again that nobody's expecting. It's kind of hard to see a Los Angeles team lose again and again and again. And now you're not talking about a bad series anymore. It's a full 6-game stretch between 2 playoff teams, to be fair, but these series gave the Dodgers no room to breathe. And that's where it starts to get interesting. I'd say the first part that we have to deal with is the offense, and the offense has to be better. When you look at the Dodgers roster, scoring runs shouldn't be difficult. There's way too much talent in this lineup for the offense to disappear for this long of a stretch, but that's one of the most frustrating parts about baseball. You can put together the most terrifying lineup imaginable on paper, and it doesn't matter if everybody goes cold at the same time. And during a losing streak like this, every missed opportunity gets magnified. You get runners on base and don't bring them home. You get the leadoff hitter aboard and strand them. You get one big opportunity with runners in scoring position and can't get the hit. And suddenly you're looking at the scoreboard and it's the 8th or 9th inning, wondering how you just lost again. One of the biggest lessons to be learned throughout this 6-game stretch is that it doesn't matter how many superstars you have, somebody has to deliver in the big moment, which of course they've gotten all throughout the playoffs last year and the regular season this year. Again, I'm not trying to overstate just a 6-game stretch, but I think this offense, the way it's currently formed, has a lot of work to do. When you look at Mookie Betts having one of the most down years he's ever had, Max Muncy certainly on the wrong side of 30, and they have multiple veterans or young guys that they've brought in to fill holes, because we don't know when Will Smith is coming back. We don't know. Dalton Rushing just went on the IL. Their only backstop is Ben Rohrvet. We're talking about the Los Angeles Dodgers. They've always been a team to put together guys like Kike Hernandez or Miguel Rojas and have these Alex Call even, have these underrated older guys to go out there and still perform. But you look at this team and even the big guns aren't showing up. Kyle Tucker is having probably his worst season ever on a baseball field, and it's happening on his biggest contract. Tommy Edman hasn't been the same playoff-saving Tommy Edman that he has always been. And like I said, they've definitely run into injuries that hopefully they can fix by October, especially at the catching position. Ben Rohrvet and Hunter Fiducia are not going to be the catchers come playoff time. However, I think that gets into a bigger issue. You can't just out-talent everybody. And I think this gets into a bigger problem with the Dodgers. Sometimes we look at the roster and assume they're just going to win because they're the Dodgers. Look at all of the money they spent. Look at all of the stars they have, the rotation, the lineup. On paper, it looks ridiculous, and you'd almost think they'd go 162-0. According to Vegas, they will go 162-0 because they've never been an underdog in a single game yet this year. Boston and Chicago just reminded us why we play the games. The games aren't played on paper. Both teams came into the series and beat the Dodgers not once, but 3 times. 6 consecutive combined. It's not really supposed to happen to a team like this, and I think why this losing streak feels different than a normal midseason slump is the Dodgers aren't losing because they don't have talent. They're losing despite having the absurd amount of talent. One thing about the dog days of August is that the pressure can build and things can snowball. You lose one game, it happens. You lose 2 games in a row, no big deal. You lose 3 games in a row and it's a bad series. We're now at 6 games in a row and they go into this game against the Diamondbacks tonight and they almost have to win. If they lose this game, then they're going to feel like at least they're in real big trouble. Even though if you look at the division, there's nobody really coming for them and there's nothing to really worry about. Sure, if they keep on this trend, then the Braves and the Brewers will both end with better records than them and they won't get the first round bye in the playoffs. That's not exactly something the Dodgers necessarily have to worry about come October because into August, they've kind of done enough to solidify their place in the playoff picture. But every mistake kind of seems to start to add up. Hitter comes up with a runner on second and third and strikes out, and the frustration gets worse. The reliever comes in and lets up another run, and it's kind of here we go again. Fall behind 2-0 early. Suddenly, it kind of feels like they're down 10. And for the first time ever in my life, I'm watching a game against the Cubs in Chicago, telling myself, I just don't see the Dodgers being able to come back. And that's the mental side of a losing streak that doesn't always show up in the box score, especially because you're not just playing against the opponent, you're playing against the streak that you've made up in your mind. Should Dodgers fans actually be worried? Absolutely not. It's not time to panic. The Dodgers fans could be a little concerned because I think they can use this 6-game stretch as if we lose in a playoff series, this is how it would happen. The bullpen implodes. They're not really running out the starting pitching that we would see in the playoffs. Roki Sasaki is not going to be in the lineup, but Tarik Skubal got his first start, and it didn't seem to matter. They're still the Dodgers. There's still an insane amount of talent on the roster. They're not suddenly a bad baseball team because they had a terrible week. We've seen great teams go through stretches like this before, but what concerns me is what happens next. Again, I think this is the first time that we've actually seen the offense struggle this bad and the pitching starts to show a bit of cracks. Again, I'm not really concerned about the starting pitching, but the bullpen has given up plenty of runs through this 6-game losing streak, and they're not getting big dogs back from the injured list that they don't exactly have right now. In the starting rotation, you can look at Blake Snell or Tyler Glasnow, and these guys who theoretically will be ready for playoff time but are not starting right now. But when you go through a full 6-game span, Robleski getting a start and Skubal getting a start, and these big dogs that should be getting you into the 6th, 7th inning with little to no runs, and they're the ones giving up a few runs here and there, and the offense can't pick up the slack, that is the formula to how to beat the Dodgers. Now, unfortunately for everybody else in the National League, a 6-game losing streak could easily help them. There's another way to look at this. The Dodgers needed this, seriously. They haven't faced any adversity all year. You're looking at this much talent and expectations get a little bit ridiculous because they're supposed to dominate and be this 100-game win team. And they're supposed, it's World Series or bust for every year that Shohei Ohtani's there, of course. But anything less will be considered a disappointment. Getting punched in the mouth 6 games in a row, that wake-up call comes nicely with an 8-game lead in the division on August 7th. And you don't really think of this as something that's going to kill the Dodgers, but as a guy who watches baseball night in and night out, I look at this thinking, wow, if any team like my Phillies or the Cubs or the Braves or if anybody wants a chance to beat the Dodgers, you need good pitching to shut them down, which some of those teams have, and an offense that's going to be able to hit against these pitchers. Dansby Swanson, a giant home run against Tarik Skubal, the giant free agent that they just got. I think Boston and Chicago exposed a bit of the formula, and it wasn't just luck, is kind of why I'm making this video. I don't necessarily think Tarik Skubal makes them worse, but I think everybody sees the trade from Tarik Skubal come through, and everybody was up in arms, and they're not thinking about the fact that this guy can't pitch every day. And in a playoff series, especially a 3-game series, a Tarik Skubal start's going to mean a lot, but Skubal hasn't touched 98 in his last 4 starts, and I think that's the most important thing. If he doesn't figure it out by October, Tarik Skubal, I'm not going to sit here and say he's just another guy, but if they're trotting him out in game 1, it's a hell of a matchup when you can trot out Jacob Mizorowski or Christopher Sanchez or a guy who can match that pitcher who's only going to give up 1 or 2 runs, and then it's going to come down to the bullpen and the offense. Now, trust me, getting embarrassed in August is a lot better than getting embarrassed in October. And 6 straight losses from the Red Sox and the Cubs, don't necessarily seem like the biggest deal in the world for one of baseball's biggest juggernauts, and it's easily been one of the ugliest stretches of their season, don't get me wrong. But I'm not ready to say the Dodgers are falling apart. Not yet. But I will say that the next few games just became a lot more interesting because they go and play away against a division rival who's going to give them a run for their money and who has been pretty hot lately. Championship teams respond, and we're going to find out what the Dodgers really are. So I want to know what you guys think. Is this just a random 6-game stretch, or has there actually been real, tangible things we can take away from this on how to beat the Dodgers? Or did Boston and Chicago kind of just get a little lucky with the specific games? Let me know down in the comments. And if you enjoy videos of me talking about everything going on around Major League Baseball, make sure you guys subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.